What is going on, everybody? I hope everybody is doing great today. The market itself, if you haven't been following me to this point, I've kind of alluded to the fact that this could be a strong, uh, not so much black swan event, but we were very aware of a new virus and the impact it could have moving forward. It was the only true catalyst that we had. Up to this point, we didn't really have a reason to sell. Being said, today the market had quite the, the intraday crash, uh, to say the least. Now, SPX in itself, we all know there was a variant out there. Today, we got the first U.S. case in California and San Francisco. Um, the biggest concern about this variant is the fact that it is apparently very contagious. Being said, Biden came on the horn. Essentially, the market itself started selling when Biden came on. Um, and he essentially alluded that he's going to be taking more action, whatever that is. He didn't say today, he said tomorrow he's going to let everybody know. Being said, pushing vaccines, masks, and everything else, the biggest, something I've talked about, the biggest concern here is the fact that we don't know if we get lockdowns, you're going to start impacting supply. Again, something I've been talking about, supply and demand has had severe issues and it is just starting to catch up now. And if we go on lockdown, it's going to get worse. Being said, all the other things that we've talked about up to this point when it comes to Powell and inflation and all those concerns are going to be even more of a concern because people are locked down, because people, may not be able to work because of the given circumstances, and that leaves a lot of people out of it. And you're going to see some dramatic impacts on any kind of travel or anything like that. Travel, airlines, everything dramatically impacted on what was going on today. And I think tomorrow it's only going to get worse, and for the remainder of the week, and at least for the remainder of the week, and possibly next week until we get some kind of answer. Ultimately, we'll get an answer tomorrow. That's what Biden is saying. Fauci, I know, came on and was briefly talking about it, but he essentially alluded that everything else is essentially the same. But the contagion part of it and lockdown, I think, is what is the biggest concern, is we don't know, especially because the Biden administration kind of left us up in the air as to what is going to happen. Again, they did not say that they were not going to ever not lock us down. So I think that's what the biggest concern here is. Even on a technical standpoint, everybody's been buying the dip, buying the dip, buying the dip. The market has really looked bad. I know even from this point, when you're looking at the market and it starts to roll over, the market kind of gives you this little essential warning that it's going to roll over. Majority of the time, when it does a normal rollover and correction, it has this long period of time essentially where it consolidates before it starts rolling over and falling. It gave us that. It gave us the prelude, and we're like, oh no, we're gonna go back up, and then got denied, retested from the bottom. So technical wise, everything was perfect. Technical wise, that's what you should expect. The market came down, hit the 50, retested the 20, and started selling again. It reattempted to go this morning. Then we got the news on from Biden and the variants, and then it just essentially broke right through support. Now we have it's still at good support. We have another solid support here down. It's currently sitting at a good support here at the 4,500 mark. But if that breaks tomorrow, which I'm actually expecting a retrace tomorrow because we had just such a dramatic sell towards the end of the day. I'm expecting a retest tomorrow, more of a relief bounce. Looking to short the pop tomorrow. Again, not financial advice. And then looking for that next major leg down. I think the next biggest leg down is down to essentially that 4450. From that point, the biggest thing about the index is normally I talk about the 200 and trying to wait for it to get as close as possible to the 200. Again, depending on how this virus is, if it starts to get out of hand, which everybody has said that it is It's nowhere near as bad. It's very mild compared to previous variants. It's just more contagious. And so that being said, just because it's more contagious, what does that even mean? Fully vaccinated people, it doesn't matter. It's contagious. Being said, we have to see what the president does from this point, and then we can ultimately go from that point. So this video is ultimately a state of the market. To be focusing on FANG stocks. If you're looking for a bounce, you look for a FANG. You look for the good companies, your Apples, your Teslas, right, your Googles, your Amazons. You look for those to rebound because they will be the first ones to rebound out of everything. Now, given and being said, your mid caps and small caps have really taken a massive beating to this point, and it's pretty much just been Apple pushing the way along with some other ones like your Teslas, your Microsofts, your Googles have been kind of just holding up. But there's going to be a correction. We have had a correction quite a bit already. Let's see, just in today in itself. Yeah, we had a 3% correction just in today in itself. Now you go from the top when this whole thing started. That's a 5% correction. The biggest correction we've had this year is almost, I believe it was almost 7 back in March. So we're getting pretty close. But being said, with this new variant, we don't know. That's the problem. That's the issue. So you can't assume that just keep buying the bottom unless you're holding for a really long period of time. And depending on how bad this gets, it could get really bad to where we can sell off even more. I mean, we could still sell off quite a bit. We could still sell off to around the 40, I would even say the 4,400 mark, and still be bullish. But again, it really just depends on this variant and how far the Biden administration is going to push it to that point. And if it starts affecting supply chains, then it's going to be a bigger issue. Inflation, all that stuff that we just thought we were getting over is going to essentially be regurgitated, and we're going to hear it again for the next year. Tapering, rate raises, all that stuff is just what all that's going to do is just push all that stuff further back. I think that some of the tapering will start. I think as far as like the purchasing of assets will stop. But what does that mean for the human infrastructure? Are they going to start shelling out more, printing more money for that? Because they are not purchasing. So just because they stop purchasing assets from the bank, it does not mean that money is going to be flowed into something else, like supporting human infrastructure, right? If people can't go to work, right? If you work in any of the, if you work at a restaurant, if you work on any side of that industry, if you work in the airlines, anything like that, you're going to be hit so much more dramatically, right? If you're travel or leisure, you're going to get hit dramatically. And then that being said, you're got no way to feed your family, right, or yourself, even for that matter. So, being said, that is going to be another payment that's going to be going out if we do go on lockdown. These are all things to consider. So, a lockdown does not benefit us, and it is a very scary thing. And because we barely made it out of the last one, and it's only going to do more damage to the economy than good. Right now, we are strong and everything else. We're coming out of it good right now, but again, we can't really see a lockdown. I don't foresee him locking us down, but he did not rule it out, and he made that very clear. He did not rule it out. So tomorrow we'll see. Tomorrow could be, I don't know when exactly he's going to come out and state that. I'm sure he's getting together all the information now, and we'll have to see. But one of my biggest ones I want to watch tomorrow, even if we can even take a look at Bitcoin real quick. I mean, Bitcoin's been fluctuating. The one thing I do like about Bitcoin is it's been consolidating a lot, essentially around this 55 and 59K. It's been essentially holding the zone and consolidating. As long as it doesn't break below that, this thing is going to skyrocket. This thing is what is happening now. If we get put on lockdown, inflation concerns, that is what's going to drive Bitcoin, in my opinion. If this is what continues, if we start locking stuff down, enforcing, closures on businesses and stuff like that. A lot of small businesses barely made it out alive. Most of them did not make it out of the last pandemic. It did come from left field. This is not coming from left field, but again, it is supplanting the workforce. It is affecting supply chains, and that's what matters. That's what makes the economy go around. So that's one thing we have to be mindful of, and one thing I've been talking about. But Tesla, this is one I want to watch going forward. It is currently holding essentially that 1090 mark. Breaks below that, we're going to see a test down to around the 1,000 mark. Ultimately, I'd like to try to pick it up at 1,000 because I know it's going to have a good bounce at 1,000. So roughly around here, if we can get a nice bounce here, you can see the support here. I want to try to grab Tesla here tomorrow, if at all possible. Now this, if I do catch it here, I'm going to try to catch shares and calls here. The biggest thing to watch here is to keep that on a tight leash because, again, any news that comes out, and if it's something negative about supply chain or impacting the workforce, whatever the case is, this will sell off again. And so you definitely want to not just buy and hold unless you're an investor. Again, this is not financial advice, but in my experience, what's going to happen is this. We got a couple more days of this to really figure out what's going on. We still don't know how bad it is. The data on that still won't come for another 2 weeks. We got debt ceiling around the corner in 2 weeks. There's a lot going on in the next 2 weeks. All being said, I think it could be correcting enough to where we can have a really nice bull run into January, February. But you can't be so bullish that you're not paying attention to the obvious signs that are happening right now. Because you'll get wrecked. And a lot of people do get wrecked because they just keep buying the dip. You have to really be mindful of what's going on. And again, if you're a long-term investor, right, you're just going to average down anyway. So it's a good time to do that. But if you are an intraday trader or a swinger, you definitely want to wait. Some of these bigger supports are being hit, and then make sure you're following it very tightly in the main stocks, right? You want to stay. This is why I play FANG stocks, because of this fact that you want to make sure that you're in a stock that's going to recover quickly. That's what we're looking for. If there's other ones we want to pick up, like your Square, I still like Square. Planters, if they start getting really low, you pick those up, average down on those as well, if you're going from that investor standpoint. But so Tesla, that's what I'm looking for that. Apple, it finally gave way. I wasn't impressed with Apple till it finally had this move. It had this massive rip when the whole market was selling. It's about the only time it really moved. So I really want to just your daily 20 is sitting at the 155. So I'm looking for that Apple to at least tag the 155 if we continue to sell. ASML, semiconductor machinery. So one thing I do like about ASML, I really do like this company, and I'm starting to trade a lot more. I do really like it. Looking to see if it comes close to around at 7. I want to see how the chips do. Chips are going to recover. Everything in technology needs chips. So I'm looking for a good correction in this and picking this up if it decides to go down further. Facebook, I wasn't worried about. Facebook has just really been beaten down. I'd kind of just leave Facebook alone for now. Microsoft still holding well. I think it could still hit the 320 mark is probably the next mark I'm looking for support there. Google is much like Facebook. It's just going to get hammered, which I don't know why, to be honest, because it just they have this best earnings and it doesn't get affected as much when it comes to lockdowns and stuff. Yes, advertising stops if the supply chain is affected. But for the most part, it does quite all right. So I'm kind of looking at that 27.31 mark from there. If it does break below there, you're starting to look at much lower levels, which could be the 26.75 mark essentially. And then below that, you're looking 25.38 mark. Google hits that low. It's definitely one you want to pick up. They always crush earnings. So this is why I only want to break up ones that really do very well, because those are the ones that are going to churn and start running when the market picks back up. Your Amazon took a massive beating along with Shop. For this one, I'm actually looking for lower. I'm not even looking at this until it hits that 33.50 mark. If it gets that far tomorrow, and then you got these lower levels. Yeah, one right here at the 32.62 mark, and then essentially the 31.95 mark is another one right there. Shop is another big one. You want to buy on the dip if it hits that low. You got the 14.27 mark here, which is a decent support. We'll probably actually get a bounce here tomorrow, get a retest of the 1505, and then it'll sell off. I'm expecting it down here. I don't want to pick this up until at least it's down to this support down here around the 1365 mark is where I'm looking for shop. A lot of the ones like a firm up, they all kind of gave up. So I'm just kind of letting those go until I kind of see what happens from here. Moderna could possibly benefit. It is sitting on support here. You don't want it below essentially the 312 mark. One thing you got to be mindful of this is even though there's talk about boosters and everything else, they don't know if this is going to actually, the CEO came out and then came back and withdrawn his statement. But essentially that Moderna may not be effective on a new variant. If that's the case, this thing's going to get crushed. So I would kind of hold off on any vaccine stocks right now, just because of that fact. So I hope this helps you guys. Just again, be aware, be very cautious about what's going on. I kind of alluded that this could possibly happen. You always have a 50-50 chance. And today it was just, you got the first case in the US, I think, which ultimately just led to the massive sell-off. Again, we don't know how bad it is. It's still here, and that's very mild. So even if it is mild, fear is still there. It's very apparent and very obvious, and that fear will last at least for the next couple of days. Then maybe it gives us a big enough correction to get back in and start looking at that Santa Claus rally. Right now, I wouldn't just be buying the dip. You pay attention to what's going on in the news. That's why fundamentals is important, because you need to know what events are going on. And then we'll take it from there. So yeah, till next time, I'll see you guys later.